I missed what you said. What is it?
Japan.
Yeah.
The what?
Japan. The country.
Japan.
The country, Japan.
Oh, okay.
The country, Japan.
You're like, what the hell is she talking about?
Damn.
What the heck is that all about? Well, I suppose it's complicated, because in this episode of Charbroiled Chats, Wally hears angels singing, Dave battles existential demons with a niblick, and Grace loses her shit in a Ferris wheel.
We're not talking about medical, clinical obsession or anything like that. We're not doctors.
Like you mean the restraining orders that I've had and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I don't even know what you mean by that.
Well, we're not doctors. We can't give advice, so that's what I'm saying. So we don't get sued.
Well, and we should also mention what I thought, that we're not talking about the Calvin Klein perfume.
Yeah, right. Isn't there a movie, too? There's got to be a movie.
Yeah.
It's probably Dark Obsession or Fatal Obsession. Isn't there Fatal Obsession? Is that a movie?
Yeah, maybe. There's got to be a Cinemax movie with that title.
Right.
Skinemax. Remember they used to call it that?
Yeah, no, they still do, I think.
Do they?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my God.
So we're not doctors. Dave is a doctor of Wittgenstein, but other than that, we're
Doctor
not.
of philosophy. How do you define obsession, then? How are you defining it?
Kind of a preoccupation, something that you think of a lot, not an addiction or something that ruins your life because you can't stop thinking about it, but just something that you have always liked to think about. Well,
I have an obsession that comes, I think, from a phobia.
Okay.
And I wouldn't even know what to start with the phobia or the obsession.
Well, how do they relate?
Well, the phobia is I've always had a fear of heights.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in it, it has come and gone, but over the past 20 years, it has got very, very bad. I mean, when I was younger, I didn't like going over bridges. I didn't like going on Ferris wheels. I didn't really even like standing on balconies and such. And then it got better for a while, and then it just got really bad again.
Oh, really?
Yes. In fact, a few years ago, when Luis was about 7 or 8, we went to Niagara Falls, and there's a big sky wheel kind of thing in Niagara Falls, like they have in London, the London Eye. In Niagara Falls, it's called the Sky Wheel. I don't think it's as tall, but it's still big. So Luis really wanted to go on it. And in terms of rides, Ferris wheels have always scared the crap out of me. I think it's something about not having anything under me. Because, for example, I can go on roller coasters with no problem. And the only reason I don't do it anymore is because I get nauseated now. My metabolism has changed so that I can't really go on things like that anymore. But I didn't have any problems with those. It was just the Ferris wheel. So in Niagara Falls, he really wanted to go on that sky wheel. And I thought, well, I can go on this because it's a cab. Each little thing is a cab. And people get in it, and it's closed. There's a door. You know what they look like, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
gondola. It's a gondola thing.
A gondola. Yeah. There you go. That's the word. So we get on the gondola, and we're the only ones in it. And for this particular ride, we were the first ones on. So we were not only in the gondola, but then we had to wait for everyone else to get on the gondola. So we get on, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, yeah, this feels okay. And this goes up to the next tick while the next gondola is being loaded. And I started getting a little more nervous, and then it went up another tick and another one. And I just started feeling very, very scared. And I started sweating, and I said to Luis, I don't think I can do this. And he's like, Mom, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And at that moment, the recording comes on to describe the sky wheel. And it's like, it towers 171 feet over Niagara Falls. And it takes 3.5 revolutions over 8 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God, I started shitting my pants. And we were the only ones in this gondola. It could have fit like 6 people, but we were the only ones in there. So I braced myself on one of the benches, like on each end with my arms. I put my feet on the bench across and I'm bracing myself in this thing. freaking out. I'm like, Luis, I have to press the stop button, the emergency button. He's like, no, Mom, you can do it. That's not bad. I'm like, no, Luis, I have to press the stop button. And so it's going up, tick by tick, and it's getting worse and worse. I had my eyes closed. I couldn't even deal. I'm like, Luis, pressing the emergency. And I pressed the emergency button and I said, you've got to get me out of here. And they're like, oh, we're almost done. I'm like, you've got to get me out of here.
Wow.
The problem was when I finally pushed the emergency button, we are at the top.
Yeah, of course.
Of the sky wheel.
Yeah, what good is it?
Oh my God. And so we had to wait to get down to the bottom.
It's not like a train where they just stop.
Oh, it was horrific. I got off. My legs were like jelly. And my heart was racing. And then I started getting that euphoric feeling, like you get after I don't know if either of you guys have a tattoo.
No.
I have one tattoo and it hurts a lot. And after you are done with it, you get this euphoric feeling because you've got all these endorphins
dopamine
rushing through your body to deal with the pain.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So it must be a similar physiological thing because I was euphoric. And also I was happy that I was off, I guess. But it was more like a drug high.
Yeah.
And oh my God. So that was the worst example of it. Although now in planes too, I'm pretty bad.
So did that trigger what made it worse from then on?
It had been getting worse before that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that's just the worst example of it. Because usually I can manage it so that maybe people don't know. But we were with friends at that Niagara Falls visit, and so everyone knew about it. So I know. So the obsession is mountaineering disasters.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
And the heights.
Yes. So not only I'm terrified of heights. And I hate being cold, and I hate being hungry, and I hate being tired.
Wow.
So you put those all together, and you've got mountain climbing.
Right.
At least like alpine climbing. I know that there's so many different versions of it. I'm just going to use mountain climbing as a general term. So this obsession happened, I think, after I read Into Thin Air. Did you guys read that book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something about that book, it just really clicked, and I became obsessed with mountaineering disasters. So ultimately, I saw like almost every movie you can see. I read 20 books. I became very knowledgeable about the little terms that they used. The last thing I did in that regards, I went to see the Alex Honnold movie Free Solo. So it was really intense, probably 10 years ago, but I still have it. And that's evidenced by the fact that you guys send me those little videos of people doing parkour, like on top of Russian bridges and stuff. Right.
Well, I have that too. That's why I get attracted to that.
So you like that though?
No, I don't like it at all. I hate heights.
Oh.
No. I don't mind like airplanes, but I don't like being attached to the ground in something high, even top of a ladder or something like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I hate it.
Could you go on one of those things where there's one in Niagara Falls, but I know that there's one like way high, those glass bottom observation things?
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I know I couldn't.
No, I tried it in the what is it, the CN Tower?
The CN Tower, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I tried to I literally stood there and tried to make myself walk across it, and I couldn't.
It's horrible.
So you did it, Dave?
Oh, yeah, I did it, yeah.
That makes me look bad.
Can't stand it's very difficult to do. To stand on a clear surface and look straight down, hundreds and hundreds of feet. It's just bizarre. There's that Mission Impossible, where Tom Cruise is doing the rock climbing at the very beginning. And it looks like he's literally just hopping around, from handhold to handhold with nothing beneath him. And it's like, the bottom of the chasm is like a mile down or something. It's just like insane.
I don't know if I noticed this because of my fear, but every Mission Impossible movie has him at a ridiculously high place doing ridiculous things. Right. Every single one.
The one where he's on the building in Dubai or wherever it is.
Dubai, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even watch that. I had to avert my gaze.
You can't. And they say that the reaction that you get in your body, even from looking at something like that or reading about it or whatever, is the actual reaction you would get if you were up there.
Well, is that why you studied mountain climbing and read all the books, to make yourself feel bad or to try to eliminate it?
It was really weird. I would feel like that all the time that I was reading them. And maybe because I was in the safety of my house, it was somewhat pleasurable to have that anxiety.
It's like a horror movie. I mean, that's why you watch the horror movie, to have all of those reactions, but know at the same time that you're totally safe. Yeah. Yeah,
I guess so. But what makes you feel happy about that? I'm not sure.
Well, it's any narrative is the same thing. It's any narrative operates by that principle. You're going through this, just Hamlet or King Lear or anything, Hitchcock movie.
You're releasing the tension.
Yeah. It's a catharsis, and it's like it's playing. It's a form of play, like a kid pretending to be shot and dying, and so you're going through all of this experience without actually suffering.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I get to the point of tears, and like when we watched Free Solo, I was a couple of times on the point of tears.
Oh God, that's crazy.
Is the mountain climbing learning experience the obsession, and the phobia is the height?
Well, phobia is heights. The obsession is just reading about all these mountaineering disasters, because not only do I get that high from sort of the physiological response, but there's also this weird thing where I sit there and every other page I'm like, why would they do this? Like every page. Why are they doing this? Oh my God. I just, sometimes like if there's someone around while I'm reading one of these things, I'm like, listen to this. Would you do this?
That's good though. The intensity of that. I like that.
It's total intensity. And it's really, I feel really bad for my son, because there have been times when we've gone places and like he can go to Darien Lake or whatever with his friends and, have a ball on all the rides and all that, but I won't do those anymore, and especially the ones that would make me afraid. And I feel so bad because he will go someplace like Miami or something, and and I won't go on anything with him. And he has no fear.
Obsession with mountain climbing. Not many people have that.
Yeah, and I would never do it. I mean, you would think that when you say, I'm obsessed with mountain climbing, you'd think like, oh, you do that all the time. No, I would never do it.
Most people who are obsessed with mountain climbing are mountain climbers.
And mine is specifically, too, with the disasters, because I've picked up a couple of books. I'm like, where's the disaster? I'm not interested in this. I think because it proves my theory that these people are all nuts.
Dave didn't have anything that he considered a real obsession, but we know, starting with Wittgenstein, it goes downhill from there.
Yeah, right. I always use that. I just use that as a placeholder to sound intelligent. There was really nothing behind that.
Is it Wittgenstein or Wittgenstein?
Yeah.
It's like young Frankenstein.
Nah, it's Wittgenstein is the way young. Yeah, Frankenstein to you.
Wittgenstein.
I don't.
That's Frankenstein.
I mean, I don't have an obsession in that sense where there's that real. Although, golf was going to be mine. It's hard to distinguish between an obsession and a pastime. I mean, but there's a distinct connection between agony and obsession, as there is with yours, because golf can be miserable.
Well, yeah, it seems. I mean, is that true? Is that part of the definition? Like, in order to be obsessed with something, there has to be some painful part of it?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. With golf, it's overcoming that, avoiding it, avoiding the peril, avoiding the agony of being unable to do what you're trying to do, which is always the challenge in golf.
But, when I hear you talk about it, it sounds to me like you kind of torture yourself afterward. With the score and how you could have done better. No, actually, afterward is much, when the game is over, all of the agony is over. I mean, it's all, if you're in the middle of a round where you're doing something different every time you swing the club, it's just miserable. I mean, it's one of the most miserable experiences there is. And I can't quite figure out why.
Well, see, I think that does point to the idea of an obsession having the painful aspect, because I wouldn't get obsessed with that. I'd be like, screw that. I'm not even going to bother anymore because I can't do it.
Yeah, no.
You keep doing it.
But that's the key, is that you can do it, and you can do it perfectly. You just can't do that through 18 holes. And yeah, you'll have one shot during a round, or, half the round, whatever. You'll be shooting or you'll be putting out of your mind, and you're just doing like unbelievable things. You're doing stuff that you didn't think you could do or whatever. And that's then, and then you won't. And that's what just keeps you coming back. I was telling Walt that it's very much like a video game where you're just doing you're trying to do the same thing over and over and over again. And you do. You actually can get a little better at it, as you do in a video game, if you keep doing it, if you keep trying. And that's what keeps you coming back, because it's something that if you work hard at it enough and you do it often enough, you're going to get better. You're going to get more consistent.
Even if you were consistent, would that make you happy?
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
even if you were bad at it and consistent?
Oh, no, I mean, bad, but it's all relative.
Right.
That's the thing. Bad is only in relation to what your normal round is.
But you have expectations.
Yeah, you have expectations. And if you're close to what you expect that you ought to be able to do, then it's really pleasing. I mean, you feel good. It's like what Grace was saying. You feel good for most of the day, because you've gone out there and you've proven to yourself that you can do this difficult thing in a consistent way with enough consistency and, with enough focus. It takes all these characteristics that you can apply to any activity in order to succeed at it. But there's just there's a weird mystery to being able to do it exactly right the same time over and over again. And nobody can do that. Tiger Woods can't do that. Nobody can do that with golf. It's just one of those things where it's so complicated in a way that you just can't make it happen exactly the same way every time you swing a club.
Do you think that's different from any other activity?
No, but I think maybe it's more exaggerated. Like, you can, like a really good pro can have such a horrible day that he's way off the way he would normally play. Whereas that's not the same. That's not the case for a quarterback or a pitcher. I mean, they're going to be off by increments and they're going to lose. But that's all. It's much more dependent on the strength of the other team or the other players and a lot of other factors.
Right.
Well, and obviously, since a lot of people play golf and they can play well into their 80s or whatever, most people think that they could do it, right?
Well, yeah, and they can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it, and that's what the handicap system does. It if you're really going to compete, if you care about competing with other people, then you've got a handicap, and that just takes into account your level of skill,
right?
And then you can compete on the same. You can compete in some way with another player, but the fun of golf for me isn't competing with other players. It's just competing with my own best score or my own average score.
Yeah,
seeing how well I do in comparison to that.
I think probably your attitude toward it as purely an amateur is, I don't know how the statistics would break out, but I would guess that most people like it because they like going out with their friends and having a few beers and hanging out later. And it's a nice walk and you do get some fresh air.
Right.
But I wonder how many amateurs think about it in the way that you do.
Oh, most of them do.
They do.
Yeah,
okay.
I think most do. Yeah, and that all of those other things are a secondary source of enjoyment. But the primary enjoyment is just the delight of having done something and something well, and then having to do it again a few minutes later, and then just having to keep doing it over and over again, and then adding it all up and seeing how you did. There's something about it that's
so boring.
It's very different. Yeah, it's very. You think? Yeah, it sounds boring, but like I played with Matthew and my son, and he has this Whoop, which is this. It's kind of like a Fitbit, but it's more complicated and sophisticated, and it's monitoring all kinds of metabolic things in your body, and it's just the usual heart rate and whatever. But so he looked at his average heart rate, and we were driving around in golf cars, for the entire round, and his average heart rate was 109. And all he did was just get out of the cart, stand there waiting for other people, go up to the ball, take 45 seconds or 30 seconds to swing the club, and then get back in and drive to the next shot.
That's interesting.
And even that, yeah. And because because there is a level of tension and anticipation. Every shot, there's all this anticipation, hope, the threat of disappointment. It sounds hilarious. It sounds ridiculous, but it's amazing. It's amazing how incredibly enjoyable it is.
You get those endorphins from that.
That's what you do. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Or you don't. And when you don't, it's like misery. I mean, the books that are written about golf, and they talk about how miserable it is to spend 3 hours when everything is you're uncoordinated. Everything's out of sync. You don't even know why you're swinging badly. You can't figure it out. It's horrible. I mean, it's horrible.
That's a funny thing about it is unlike other activities, like if you're a mountain climber or a gymnast or something like that, it looks miserable. It could be miserable. Like the next time you do the vault, you might break your back or something.
Right.
But golf is out there in an idyllic setting.
Right.
And it's quiet and the birds are chirping.
Yeah, you shouldn't care.
And yet, underneath the surface is all this tension. And
it's true.
Angst.
I really think it's because it's an activity where it's a metaphor for everything else. It's as if you feel like if I can't hit this ball, then I just suck.
Yeah. I'm a horrible husband, father, friend, and grandfather.
I can't do anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, not that, but it's just a matter of like, I don't have the skill to survive.
And tell me about it.
And I think it goes back to very primitive things where hitting things with a stick just goes back.
Funny.
It goes back to hunting. It goes back to hunting and killing and surviving. You have to aim a stone at the head of that animal, or else you're not going to eat tonight. And that's where baseball and football and golf and all of these sports come from, is that primitive necessity. And if you don't do it, you're not going to live, and that's what I think it goes back to that.
I don't read enough or care enough, frankly, about sports to have heard that idea, but I like it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what it's really about. I think that's why everybody just watching them is fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. When I watch, I do like them.
Yeah.
Do you pay attention to any sports, Grace?
No, I used to be a big hockey fan. And I still enjoy watching that. And I used to pay a lot of attention to tennis. But other than that, nothing really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, golf has got to be very boring to watch. It has to be boring if you don't play it.
Well, oddly enough, the times I watched it on TV, I enjoyed it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why.
It is kind of pleasant on TV. If Sunday afternoon, there's nothing else.
The people talking too really can affect your enjoyment of it, because if they're talking intelligently about it, you can learn things. Oh, I didn't know that. And they tell you the player's history, and maybe they'll tell you some of the angst that he or she has been going through, and it makes it more interesting. So I guess that's why those people get the big bucks. I don't know.
It becomes an obsession because of that repetitive quality, and deep down that if you do it enough, you are going to get a little better. You're just going to get a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A little
bit. Yeah, but a little bit could be 10 strokes. I mean, and that could be a completely different level of play.
Sure.
And this next shot, Bill.
Yeah, right.
If he makes par, it's just like hitting a snake with a stick.
That's right. It's just like, he's going to go home and eat tonight. He's going to have something around the campfire to cook.
His tribe will survive because of this par 3.
That's funny.
Okay, I have what could be considered a real obsession.
Okay.
That I had all my life. And I'm going to tell you the origin story. One of my earliest memories, listen, you guys, this is an old guy talking about memory lane. So jump in and say hurtful things if you want.
Way back when.
One of my earliest memories is me standing up in the front seat of my father's 1948 Pontiac. And I probably 5, because I could stand up, on the seat in front of him and drive. And he would let me drive like that.
At 5 years old.
He thought it was hilarious. And then a few years later, every time it snowed, we would go out in the car and he would work the pedals and I would steer. And he would have me aim at a snowbank on the corner of a sidewalk and try to hit it with the back of the car, slide the car through the corner. And then he built blocks that fit on on the brake and the accelerator, do the same thing. We'd go out when it snowed. He just, for some reason, he thought it was the most hilarious thing to watch me do that.
And how old were you at that point?
That was probably 7.
Holy crow.
Yeah. I can see where this is going.
Yeah, you know what my obsession is.
You're like Ricky Bobby.
It's exactly like that.
The baby Jesus.
And,
your baby Jesus in your diaper.
So,
go ahead, Walt.
My father, when he was in just after high school, he and another guy bought a World War I biplane. So that's where he was coming from. He flew back in a time when it was absolutely crazy, but also kind of fashionable, in the 20s.
How interesting.
Huh. He bought a biplane?
There were hundreds of ex-World War I biplanes by that time.
Oh, I see.
And they were cheap, but they
Surplus.
They were all falling apart and everything. But he and another guy, and that was at a time when you might get some hints on how to fly, but mostly you taught yourself.
Oh my God.
And so he and this other guy had the plane, and they learned how to fly. And after he got pretty good at it, the whole family, they had like a picnic at the flying field, and they went out, and he was going to give rides to everybody. And his sister, who was like 4 or 5 years younger, got in the back, or I think it was in the front probably. And he flew up, and he went upside down.
No.
And she literally almost fell out.
Oh, God. Almost.
Oh, my God.
Only by jamming her leg and her arms in amongst the seats and the frame.
Well, that's exactly what you do on a sky wheel.
Very good, Grace.
And she came back screaming and crying. And
what a
and they said,
madman.
Why did you do that? And he said, well, I thought she put the seatbelt on. You always put the seatbelt on.
Wow.
It wasn't his fault.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Grief.
See, that is making me almost sick right now to think of that whole experience.
In those days, a seatbelt was strictly for that. It wasn't a safety thing in case of a crash. It was to keep you in when the plane was upside down.
Good Lord.
That's where he was coming from. I'm very much like him. He was kind of a shy, quiet, introverted person, but he had this edge.
So your dad, he had no compunction about putting a 7-year-old behind the wheel of a car.
Right. So it had to be, I'm figuring like it was 1957. I suddenly find out we're going to go to the New York State Fair in Syracuse. And this was a huge deal because we never went anywhere. And this is my first road trip. So my uncle wanted to go to the fair because he was a DJ, and he had heard this guy called Johnny Mathis. And he was going to be at the fair, and he had to go see him in person and see if he could talk to him. And we started out early in the morning. It was the first time I'd ever been up before sunrise. And it was just this magical ride to the state fair. And when we got there, my uncle went to see Johnny Mathis, and my father said, well, let's go over here. So we go over to the racetrack, and it's probably 98 degrees. And it was a miserable day. Even as a little kid, I knew it was uncomfortable and miserable. It's standing room only. We're in this massive crowd of people, no place to sit, no place to get out of the sun. Everybody's sweating. And this race starts. I was just old enough where I could sit up on my father's shoulder. I don't know how old you would be at that point, but
17.
As the cars start out on this track, it's dirt, and this dust comes up overhead, and everybody's sweating, standing there literally looking like a sugar donut. You're covered in dirt.
How fun.
But the sound of the cars and it was like combat. It was unsurvivable, covered in dirt, sweating.
How funny.
Couldn't live with that. It was so uncomfortable. And we went back in the horse barn area and took all our clothes off and stood in the horse barn and hosed ourselves down, and then put the crappy clothes on again and drove home. And when I got home, I thought that was the best day I've ever had. And that left an impression on me that I never shook it from that point on.
What an awesome memory.
When I got up the next morning, I went to my toy collection of, toy cars, and I separated the race cars from the regular cars and threw out the regular cars.
That's what a memory. I can't believe you remember this stuff.
Yeah, I remember because that was, the beginning. And then the obsession is that ever since that moment, I have never been far from thinking about driving. And the racing is kind of a secondary thing. I don't really care about cars.
Driving, period.
The act of driving, and I mean, to this day, I was in the grocery store yesterday and wheeling a grocery cart around and thinking about what line I could take into the next aisle.
hitting the apex at the end cap display. Yeah.
I love it.
Seriously, it's that bad. I can't drive a car and talk. I can hardly talk because I'm thinking about where the car is positioned, how hard I'm touching the brake.
That's so funny.
I always remember that no matter what car you were in, like taking an on-ramp or an off-ramp with Walt driving is harrowing experience.
Yeah, I remember being in that Mini Cooper that you bought, the old one, and feeling like I feel like the Flintstones right now because I feel like my feet are that close to the ground, and I think I was a little scared of the way you were driving too.
Well, he knows, but he knows how much how fast you can actually go without overturning a car, and there's almost no limit, and so it just seems insane. Yeah. It seems like you're going at an insane rate of speed. And I've never had an accident.
I've had tickets, but I never felt that I put anyone in danger either. I mean, but I couldn't shake it. I mean, like I said, I still think about it every moment to moment.
So you spend money on it then? You spend waking hours thinking about it? What else? I mean.
Well, then I had to go racing when I got to be, 21 or something. And then I quickly discovered that I wasn't that good at it. So that kind of faded away. I remained an obsessive fan, but I didn't continue that.
What do you have to do to be good at racing?
It's a feel, I don't know. It's everybody talks about reflexes and eye-hand coordination and that sort of thing, but it's just a basic being able. They say that they've done studies where racing drivers absorb and process information faster than any other athletes. And it's just the fast ones have a talent for figuring out what's fast. The reality is only certain people can figure it out.
Yeah, it's a neurological thing like many athletes. They say that I think tennis players, they have more ability to judge the distances and the speed of the object and their and what is that word for proprioception? That's what gymnasts have that allows them to know where their body is in space, and they have a very acute sense of proprioception.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So that maybe there's like a neurological basis in every single elite sport.
There's something in that. I think there's something in that in all sports.
Yeah.
There has to be that. When I watched Josh Allen passing in the last Bills game, the accuracy, the way he could get, to know the speed that the ball had to go, the arc, and where it was going to be at precisely the moment when the receiver could just barely reach it. Meanwhile, when he tossed the ball, the receiver was yards away from that spot running. How you process all that is incomprehensible, but and again, it goes back. I mean, this goes back tens of thousands of years. I'm sure it's stuff that's ingrained in the body from having to survive because you had to have that accuracy to survive.
And another facet of all those things, and I think this is true of racing especially, right? Like you have to be able to just have this intense focus too. Right. You cannot lose that focus.
Right. There's nothing else.
Because then you're dead.
When you're racing, there's nothing else in the world.
It's what you're describing but it's so bizarre. It's so funny to compare golf and racing, but it's exactly the same thing. When you are really focused, which you have to be in golf, if you lose your focus and concentration, then you're done. And if you are focused for 3 or 4 hours, everything else in your life is gone. I mean, it's gone. And that's partly why it's such a pleasure is that there's nothing else in your mind except that stupid little ball. And that's an amazing experience to have that for, 2-3-4 hours. And it's like meditation. I mean, everything else is just wiped away.
Yeah. I mean, I'm that way when I listen to music or when I read.
Same thing.
I mean, I'm the kind of person I cannot have music on when I'm working because I pay attention to the music. I can't filter that out. Music is the thing that I just focus on. So that's all neurological stuff. But so Walt, with the driving then, so how do you get any kind of speed fixes these days, or what do? You like go on a remote Tennessee road and just go 120 miles an hour?
No, I don't. Especially now, I don't do any of that because I realize, the consequences. But
yeah,
that's an odd thing about it. It's an obsession that there is no way, other than a video game to feel it, to realize it. I compare it to skiing.
Yeah,
that's the feel of it. But you can always go skiing, but unless you have a lot of money and time, and you can't race cars.
Well, yeah, that's true of skiing too. Yeah, it's expensive.
I mean, you may not think this is true, but when I was a kid, I was kind of nerdy.
No way.
No, how's that possible?
Yeah.
No way.
And so,
that's incredible.
I was always last to get picked for the baseball team, and I had no abilities with any sports. It was a struggle for me. And then I got my license, came home. I knew that it was supposed to arrive in the mail, and I went home and at lunchtime at school and found my license. So I immediately go to my father at work and say, can I borrow the car? And I skipped school that afternoon and drove off in his 1959 Ford Galaxy.
Oh my God.
Got lost immediately because when you're a kid, you don't go that far. You don't pay attention.
You don't pay
when
attention
you're going.
to where you are.
And I get lost all the time anyway. So but
yes,
I took a turn onto this dirt road, which happened to be a road around the city reservoir. Mm-hmm. So I'm going down this dirt road, and I'm thinking, this is really cool to be alone in the car. And then I start going a little faster, and on a dirt road, how you can feel it starts to kind of float a little bit. Come up, of course, I didn't know the road, and I come up on this sharp turn, and all of a sudden the car snaps sideways, and I'm going, and I immediately counter steer and hit the accelerator, and it kind of stabilized it, and it went on this long slide down the road. And at that moment, it was like angels singing,
Yeah, right.
That was it.
That's straight out of Cars, the cartoon Cars.
Yeah, right.
Dirt is different. Well,
it's funny that you knew what to do to straighten out.
I think I'd spent so much time just reading about it and reading every magazine, watching every TV show.
Yeah, but there was where the focus comes, because you always hear you steer out of a skid or whatever.
Steer into
Could
it.
I even have the, or whatever?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I've been doing wrong. But I mean,
your insurance rates, that's why they're so high.
But I don't have the presence of mind in that moment to remember that stuff.
Yeah. And see, that's not even something I think about. It just,
yeah, that's cool.
I'm never afraid in a car, ever.
But it's interesting. I didn't realize that it was the impact, the imprint of all of that was on the act of driving more than being a racing fan. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the process of driving has been always in my head, and the racing is fun because I like racing of any kind. It's a sport I can understand, whether it's boats or track and field. I like the intensity of it and the purity of it, and there's always rules and regulations that get in the way, but basically you got to beat the clock.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were going to say speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Well,
that was your obsession.
Speed is relative, that's it.
Yeah.
People always say, well, how fast how fast is that car or whatever, and it could be 45 miles an hour going around a corner. It doesn't have to be fast. It's relative,
So is that why you wonder about James Garner, because he was in that racing movie, and you're like, why wasn't he?
He's a pretty big star.
Right, right.
Well, but he wasn't as big as, I think Wally and I talked about this. He wasn't as big as he could have been, perhaps. Because why did he end up on the Rockford Files?
Right.
Back in those days,
He should have been bigger.
huge stars did not go on
everybody,
TV.
that's a paycheck. Everybody has to have a paycheck.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Right. Was he a TV star or a movie star?
Well, but he had to go to that paycheck because obviously he wasn't getting the movie roles or something.
Which is weird.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Yeah.
Although when you think about it, in the 70s, he didn't really have necessarily a 70s movie face. He had more of that classic movie star look versus like Peter Fonda or Al Pacino or, they all had those kind of counterculture looks that were that was true. Huge then. Right. And he was more like a Paul Newman.
Yeah, he just had a very unique personality where he
Can we talk about driving some more?
Yes.
Well, so you want to talk about Grand Prix then? I mean, let's just switch to the movie with James Garner in it.
That was the movie. See, I haven't seen that. Was that the movie he was in?
It's awful.
Yeah.
It is?
Oh, yeah.
That's too bad.
Watch Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
I'm dying to watch that.
It's excellent. Of all the racing movies ever, I'd put that at number one.
So what makes that one so good? It's better than Talladega Nights? I found that hard to believe.
Yeah.
Well, it's a toss-up. It's just the characters, and it has the feel of racing about it in that period. So it's worth watching.
Now, in the trailer for that movie and I guess this didn't really happen, but Matt Damon's character is taking, who was it? The main guy around in the car. Yeah, and he's like, oh, you can do whatever you want. I'm fine. And then after Matt Damon just goes nuts on him in the car, the guy cries or something. See, that's what I would do.
It's really a kind of a moment of truth there because it's what happens. Even though he was Henry Ford and he knew about cars, he says, I didn't know it would be like that.
Oh.
And that's kind of the essence of when you get into racing, it's really different than what you think, when most people think.
It just must be such a thrill.
Well, it's what I said and did after going through an on-ramp with Walt once.
Yeah, exactly.
Why? What did he do?
Well, wept and said I didn't know it would be like that.
Right.
How does Cecilia feel about your driving, Walt?
Oh, she's fine.
She is.
The first time I drove her car, I spun out in the rain.
Wow.
And she was like, don't do that.
Don't do that again.
She's never had a problem with, sometimes I'm really not dangerous and I don't put other people at risk, but sometimes it used to get pretty fast and aggressive, but she didn't have a problem with that or the motorcycle. She just kind of put her faith in me.
Oh, right. The motorcycle. How fast, what's the fastest you've gone?
Oh, probably 160.
What? In what?
I went to the school in Charlotte, the stock car racing school. That's about as fast as you go there. They detune the cars so they don't go very fast.
I guess I would not have thought stock cars went that fast. So they do, and they go faster than that?
Well, it depends on the track, but they'll go 210, 220, 215.
Oh. Okay.
I'll tell you another story about driving. I had a Austin Healey Sprite when I was in college, and I would drive from Saratoga to Worcester, Massachusetts to go back to school. And I had a stopwatch hanging off the dashboard. And then I would record my time and try to improve on the time. It was like a 3.5 hour drive.
That's interesting.
And I had a sunny, a wet, a night, and a snow time that I would try to beat depending on the conditions.
And the point of that was what?
That's like scorekeeping.
Maximize the efficiency.
No,
yeah, you're keeping score. Right. It does
neat. Sound very, very nerdly, though.
But it changes. It turns what you're doing into where you can have a personal best.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm trying to think. Do I have any more mundane activities that I would treat like that? I don't know that I do. What's interesting is I feel like my obsessions kind of come and go. Like my phobia of heights stays throughout my life. But my obsessions come and go. I could pass up a book about a mountaineering disaster now. And like right now, I'm really sort of obsessed with Japan. For the past few years, I've been obsessed with Japan. I don't know why, but I love everything about Japan. And so I read about it. I have this newsletter from these people in Brooklyn who are obsessed with it too. And, I watch Japanese movies. I love Japanese food. I like their design, their architecture, everything about Japan I love.
I'm sorry, Grace. I missed what you said. What is it?
Japan.
The what?
Japan. The country Japan.
Oh,
the country
okay.
Japan.
You're like, what the hell is she talking about?
I thought you said ham. I thought you were into hams.
Ham.
Oh my God. The film of ham.
The architecture, yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. The poetry.
Oh my God.
The haiku, the ham haiku.
Well, one of the most interesting things I've read about Japan recently is that they are obsessed with Kit Kat. And if you go to Japan, you can get Kit Kats in like 8 zillion flavors. Things like green tea, Kit Kats.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that.
It's so interesting. I mean, I don't know. Everything that they do there just seems so interesting and unusual. I mean, they have a lot of cultural obsessions, I feel. I mean, I don't know. Maybe every culture has its obsessions. I have no idea, but.
So are you going to go?
I would love to go. And of course, you know what it is that has stopped me thus far. Plane ride.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I had a really good friend in grad school who was from Australia, and when she and her husband moved back to Australia, they would say, come down and visit. And I just couldn't fathom being in a plane for that long.
Is it the length of time or it's the
length of time that you are up in the air. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I've been to Guam on a 21-hour flight.
Ugh.
And
straight, 21 hours straight.
I was ready to just open the door, let me out. I can't do it anymore. Right.
Well, that's what I Want to Be Sedated is about, I think, by the Ramones.
After the third movie and the third meal,
yeah,
and it's awful. But you could take a boat.
Yeah, how long would that take?
Well, it'd be comfortable, though.
Well, but I think this is my generalized fear of things lately. We went on a cruise once, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and look out the porthole at the waves and just get scared shitless. Like, I'm in the middle of the freaking ocean. Look how high these waves are.
Yeah.
I have fear of I was telling my son the other day, I'm afraid of everything now. I don't know what it is, but I have this fear reaction to just about everything now.
So you're a Democrat. You're a Democrat.
That's probably what drives it, yes.
Heights, mountain climbing, long airplane rides, and hams.
Ham terrifies me. I mean, my poor son he wants to go to Korea for college, right? And I'm like, oh my God. How can I let him do that? I will be afraid every single day.
Why does he want to? Oh, because of the video games?
Well, I think that's what got him into it. But now he has a little obsession with Korea. You know, he knows all these little video game Korean phrases, and he looks up what the culture is like. He likes their style. You know, just everything about Korea appeals to him at the moment.
That's interesting.
If you enjoyed this episode of Charbroiled Chats, and even if you could barely tolerate it, you should subscribe. And if you'd like to get in touch with Grace, Dave, and Wally, easy. Tweet them at @CharbroilC or send an email to charbroiledchats@gmail.com. Tweet, email, subscribe. Go ahead. You have nothing to lose, except a little self-respect.